Hi, good evening. Let's discuss assessment criteria 1.1 for brand proposition. So in this first chapter, we're going to look at some important theories. We are going to understand principally why an organization would need to differentiate themselves from that of its competitors. So what do you mean by differentiate? What do you mean by a company differentiating themselves? So what it means is every brand, every product, every company, even you and me, we ought to strive to be different and project what we call points of differentiation. Points of differentiation. We call them PODs, points of differentiation. Throughout this entire unit of brand proposition, we are going to look at many theories on how we can differentiate ourselves from others. Think about it for a second. Think about yourself. How are you different as a brand? You are a brand. You have a name. You're a person. You're a brand. You have a brand personality. You have a brand identity. You have visual brand elements. You're a brand. How are you different to the other products? That means your competitors are maybe your peers. How are you different? How do you differentiate yourself? Similarly, our brands, our products, our companies need to differentiate themselves. And I must tell you, fundamentally, what it means to differentiate your product or your company is to occupy a unique position in the mind of the consumer compared to your competitors in the market. So let's delve into this and understand some theory. So we're going to look at some concepts of branding. We're going to look at sector-specific competitive advantage and differentiation. One fundamental theory that talks about differentiation is Michael Porter's generic strategies. We are going to look at that. We're going to talk about how having superior knowledge or market knowledge can be a strong source of differentiation. And obviously, in order to differentiate yourself, you need to understand your points of differentiation. Your points of differentiation compared to your competitors. So we'll just undertake a small competitor analysis and understand how you are different to your competitors and how can you use an analysis tool to gauge your points of differentiation. And finally, how can you orient yourself to be different through your strategic intent, or what we call the vision, mission, values, and purpose statements of the organization. So let's start. So an advantage, Michael Porter talks about these two different words, competitive advantage and differentiation. The godfather of competitive advantage, Michael Porter, Harvard professor. You have heard many of his theories, the Porter's five forces, the Porter's diamond of competitive advantage, the Porter's generic strategies, the Porter's value chain. He has introduced many theories. But the definition of competitive advantage tells us that when running a business, we have to find the means by which the company can outperform its competitors and earn higher than average profits. So as per the definition, I'll repeat that. To have a competitive advantage is to figure out the means by which the organization can outperform its competitors and earn higher than average profits. You need to study this definition. So all of us need to ask us this question: what is my competitive advantage? Products need to ask this question: what is my brands or products or services competitive advantage? A destination, a country needs to ask this question: what is our competitive advantage in Sri Lanka compared to others in the region? And how can we consistently outperform our rivals, our competitors, and earn what we call disproportionate profits or higher than average profits? If you are doing that, that means you have a strong competitive advantage. And in order to have a competitive advantage or a sector-specific advantage, one needs to differentiate themselves. So how can we differentiate? First of all, let's understand the definition of differentiation or the differentiation strategy. So the differentiation strategy, it's a strategy, is an approach businesses develop by providing customers with something unique, different, and distinct compared to their competitors. Okay? So I have put the words here in red for you to really remember them. The definition of competitive advantage: to outperform and to earn higher than average profits. And differentiation means what is unique, how are you different, what is distinct about your products or services, right? So now, I mean, I've given you some examples here that I can think of, in the recent past. I mean, this is actually a brand that I was in Hawaii, and in that region of the States, you have the tropical regions. This brand is one of my favorite brands, right? And I walked into this shop, and the pricing of a shirt that you buy or whatever it is in this shop is really high. So as you can see, the clothing, there's no brand. I mean, there's no Gucci label, Louis Vuitton label, no, nothing. So you're wondering, why is this price so high? So then they take you and watch a small, they let you watch a small video, right, of this brand. And this brand, this clothing is developed from bamboo, right? Now, bamboo-based fabrics are one of the most expensive fabrics in the world. You know why? Because they're so comfortable, they're so cooling, because it's made out of bamboo. So there's an entire process of how they ferment the bamboo, the technology that they go through. Imagine this girl is wearing bamboo, clothing made out of bamboo. So it is so cooling. And if you're in a tropical country like Sri Lanka, if you want to, in a hot climate, stay fairly like air-conditioned kind of cooling clothing, this brand is an option that you can provide. And can you imagine the research and development, the R&D, the innovation, the kind of process that they went through to develop this product? All done with the intention of differentiating themselves from that of other providers of clothing. And today, this brand is having many, many stores across many countries, including Europe, where it is extremely popular and their margins are very, very high and people are buying this brand, right? So can you see? Everyone can just sell factory rejects. Like even in Sri Lanka, if you're selling clothing, people will just buy factory rejects and just try to sell. But then there's a company that practices innovation and charges a premium price, sells a world-class quality product, exports, right? And differentiate themselves. Some time ago, this was an example that I use. Everyone makes hoppers. But Kama Sutra used to make a hopper. It was called What the Hopper. Okay. In the menu, it's called What the Hopper. And it's a 12-inch hopper. It's a 12-inch hopper. So usually the hoppers that we eat are smaller, 6-inch, 7-inch hoppers. This is a 12-inch hopper, large hopper. And you can see how they use whipped cream, they use different kinds of toppings to bring the westernized flavor to a local cuisine. And they charge a premium price. Probably one hopper might be about 400-500 rupees. So can you see? Can you see? Don't eat waffles, eat What the Hopper. And there are so many varieties of this. So there are many ways to differentiate. There are many, many ways to differentiate. Another example that I can think of is the Muji store. It's a Japanese store. I don't know if you've been to the Muji store, right? One thing about the Muji store is, right? The Muji store is a store that whatever you buy from the Muji store, their brand, Muji, is not there in the label. So let's say they have household wear, they have a lot of towels and various kinds of things that you can buy for your house. Of course, garments and clothing, nightwear, all that. But if anyone likes what you have bought, and if they want to see where you bought it from, no one will know because there's no brand on it. So it's sold as at the Muji store. The Muji store does not put their label or the brand, so people don't know where you bought it from. All right. And that's one of the unique features of the Muji store. So not to have a brand is also branding. And there are people who like it. There are people who like the fact that no one can identify what I'm wearing. There are people who like that. Therefore, they go to the Muji store. Okay. And here's another interesting example of a phone company. Now, Virtue is in the luxury phone market. They make handmade, as you can see in this example here, handmade in England by, and the maker's name is there and the signature also. And there are only few people that hand make these phones. And they are embedded with diamonds, crystals, platinum, and the most expensive kind of materials. And as you can see, it is sleek, it's sexy. Sometimes it is co-branded with car brands like Ferrari, Bentley. This one in the center here is a Bentley, and many other luxury brands. So, buying one of the Virtue phones, you can buy maybe about 4 or 5 iPhones put together is the price of a minimum Virtue phone. Right? And in countries like Dubai, Virtue phones are sold out. Virtue phones are sold out because they're limited edition pieces. There are only few pieces. There's no ample stock. You have to wait for it. So today, you can see, even in this space, there are many, many ways to differentiate. Of course, Virtue has not done well. It used to do well, but it has lost a lot of business. I don't know if they're still in operation, but about 3-4 years ago, they were still selling businesses and selling phones, and they were sold out, right? So you can see in a market where there is such a lot of competition from Apple to Samsung to Huawei to so many players, here's a company that tries to differentiate themselves. Okay. So when we talk about differentiation, we have to talk about the Porter's generic strategies. Now, Michael Porter said, if you're starting a business, you need a strategy. You need a strategy. You need a business strategy. And he came up with 4 strategic options. 4 strategic options. So Michael Porter says, if you are to build a strategy for a business, you need to fundamentally ask yourself 2 questions. If you are to build a strategy for your business, you need to fundamentally ask yourself 2 questions. Question number 1, are you going to serve a broad market or are you going to serve a narrow market? Are you going to serve a broad market or are you going to serve a narrow market? Question number 2, Porter says you must ask yourself, are you going to be the lowest cost producer or are you going to be highly differentiated? So based on these 4 areas, you can derive 4 strategic options. What is going to be your competitive advantage? Are you going to be a low cost or are you going to be slightly higher priced and differentiate? Or are you going to serve a broad market or narrow market? So based on this, Porter says, if you are serving a broad market, example, Cargill's. Cargill serves a broad market. And Cargill's also, their competitive advantage is low cost. They are the lowest cost. That's why they say, come, you can get the best price at Cargill's. So Cargill's is a cost leader. Their strategy is cost leadership. Their strategy is cost leadership. But if you look at a company like Kiehl's, who's probably the second player in the market, second in the market in terms of market share, they also serve a broad market, but they differentiate themselves. They serve a broad market. They have 100 plus branches. Cargill's has maybe 500 plus. Kiehl's maybe has 150 plus. I don't know. But they're serving a broad market, but they're differentiated. So if I ask you, how is Kiehl's different? What are their points of differentiation? Their PODs. What are the Kiehl's points of differentiation? Think about it. You will say they talk about freshness. They talk about Nexus loyalty cards. They also, Kiehl's also talks about service. They also talk about cleanliness. They also talk about having some level of variety. So you can see when you look at Kiehl's, you're talking, of course, they're parking, right? When you're talking about Kiehl's, there is some points of differentiation that comes into your mind. That means that brand strategy is differentiation. It serves a broad market and it has points of differentiation. And then you have other brands who serve a narrow market and differentiate. Like example, maybe Gloma or Spa. As a supermarket, Gloma or Spa serves a narrow market and differentiate. So if you're serving a narrow market, we also call that a niche market. niche market. N-I-C-H-E, a niche market. So you're serving a narrow market or a niche market, but you're highly differentiated. So can be glow mark or spa supermarkets. Is it clear? So why we learned this theory is to understand that there are 4 strategic options: cost leadership, differentiation, cost focus, and differentiation focus. So if you are building your brand, let's say if you're a luxury brand, you'll be focusing on the narrow market, highly differentiated with points of differentiation. So all your Prada, Gucci, Bottega, Louis Vuitton, Armani, all those things come in the differentiation focus. If you are focusing on a broad market, but highly differentiated with points of differentiation, your strategy then is differentiation. Okay, I hope it is clear. So the theory here we try to understand, don't worry about anything else, is the theory by Kevin Lane Keller, which is what are the points of differentiation and the points of parity, PODs and POPs. Points of parity are where you are equal to your competitors. Points of parity means those points you are equal to your competitors. Example, Cargills will have parking, Kills will also have parking. Cargills will also say we offer the lower price. Kills will also say we offer the lower price. So points of parity are where you're equal. Points of differentiation, PODs, are where you are different. The points where you're different. So I'll let your imagination figure out the PODs and the POPs of Jennifer Lopez and Kim Kardashian, right? And that is sort of taking us back to Porter's theory to understand that differentiation or even focus differentiation has to have strong POPs, points of differentiation. If you are to compete as a strategy and be successful, you need to have strong points of differentiation, strong points of differentiation. And this is at the heart of marketing, guys. This is at the heart of marketing. And that's why branding is a very important subject. So if you look at Rolex, as you know, Rolex is a luxury watchmaker. Their brand mantra is classic designs, timeless status. That is their brand mantra. Classic designs, timeless status. And here are their points of parity. Swiss watchmaker. A lot of other Swiss watchmakers. Durable. A lot of others offer durability. Fine materials, fine. Quality craftsmanship, accurate, attractive. Points of parity. Their points of differentiation is innovative products, unique big face appearance with white wristband, iconic crown logo, exclusive prestigious imagery, rich history and heritage, enduring premium value. So these are their points of differentiation and their points of parity. So it's very important for you to clearly understand how am I different? What are my PODs? And what are my POPs? And having superior market knowledge, if you have a lot of insights, competitive intelligence, knowledge, it is a very strong source of differentiation. It's like a person. If you're a knowledgeable person, you will stand out from the rest. Similarly, right? If your organization has a lot of insights and knowledge, a lot of knowledge in the market, you will then as a company, as a corporate, stand out, and your brand will be differentiated compared to other competitors. Okay. So what is your market knowledge? To what depth do you go in your market to understand your distributors, your customers, your intermediaries, your suppliers? Because if you don't do that, you're not going to have a lot of superior knowledge. And that takes us into a theory on comparative analysis. Let me explain this theory to you. So in this theory, we call this competitor capability analysis. Now your brand is Tata Demo. We are going to compare Demo Tata, which is your company brand, with two other small car competitor manufacturers, Microcars and Suzuki Maruti Cars. Suzuki Maruti Cars and Microcars. And this looks very complicated, but let me explain. We are going to understand the capabilities of different competitors. Now, if you take the small car industry, Tata Demo, Suzuki Maruti, and Microcars are in that industry. What are the critical success factors? Critical success factors. What are the factors that are critical to succeed in this industry? We call them key success factors. The factors that are critical to succeed in this industry. Brand image, low price, superior product offering, after-sales service, low operating costs, fuel efficiency, wider product portfolio, and the list goes on. So now we will use this competitor analysis theory to see how each player differentiates themselves from that of others. So now if you do customer research, and you ask a sample of customers, if you take these three brands, Suzuki Maruti, Microcars, Tata Demo. If you take these three brands, right? If you take these three brands, which are in the small car industry, can you rate from -2 to +2? -2 being bad, very bad, -2, -1 bad, 0 neither good nor bad, 1 good, 2 very good. That's the rating scale. So -2 is very bad, +2 is very good. So you have 5 in this rating scale. So if you rate yourself, Tata Demo, in terms of brand image, okay, you have rated as -1. You have rated as -1. Okay. Just give me a second, please. Right. You have rated as -1. But on brand image, you have rated, a sample of customers have rated Suzuki Maruti +2. Micro, 0. Neither good nor bad. Low price advantage, +1, +1, +2. Superior product offering, +1, +1, +1. After sales service, -1, +1, -1. Low operating costs, 0, +1, 0. Now, when you look at this rating, this is the rating that customers has given. This is a rating that customers have given. Now, when you take Tata, if you net off the pluses and minuses, if you take all these minus ratings, as you can see, there are 3 minus ratings, -1, -1, -1. And then you take the plus ratings, 1, 1, 1, +2. So 5 minus 3, the score is 2. Can you see that? Then if you do it here, this guy has a lot of pluses, right? So if you calculate all these pluses, and reduce this minus, the score is 12. So 13 minus 1. Same thing with this. The score is 5. So now based on this, you know that Suzuki Maruti is the best player in the market. So we compared 3 players in the market against the critical success factors to establish who is the best player, who's the second best, and Tata Demo is the third player. Got it? Highest score is Suzuki Maruti, microcars, and then you. So looking at this, you can draw many conclusions. You will know where you are weak and where you are strong. What are your points of differentiation? And what are your market leaders' points of differentiation? And each respective competitor's points of differentiation. So this theory is called competitor capability analysis. Okay. And that leads us into the final area in terms of how we can use the strategic intent, the vision, mission, and values of the organization to differentiate ourselves. So a vision statement is concerned with the desired future state of the organization. It is an aspiration, right, that will gain commitment and stretch performance. A mission statement, the word mission comes from the military, aims to provide employees, stakeholders with the clarity of the overriding purpose. So in other words, a mission is a purpose. A mission comes from the military. It's a task, a duty, or a purpose. A vision is something very, very broad. So usually a vision is defined in a way that you don't achieve it. Very long term, let's say 10-year vision. But a mission, you can achieve it, just like the military. Go and complete this mission and come. So when you look at company like Cargill's, you can see their vision and mission statements. Their vision is to be a global corporate role model in community-friendly national development. Mission, reduce cost of living, enhancing youth skills, bridging regional disparities. Little difficult to remember, there's too much, but their values are spelled out in terms of Cargill's. So now this vision, mission, and values is also an opportunity for you to differentiate yourself. So can you see their values? They're saying they're accountable, green, innovative, love, my God. Love is also there, right? And in a vision, mission statement, we will find some key terms, key points of differentiation of how the company can differentiate themselves. Another great company that has a good vision, mission, and values is MAS. Their vision is to inspire, innovate, create value, and respect humanity. Very simple. Their mission is to inspire, build talent, achieve excellence. Values are honesty and integrity, humility, passion, freedom, trust. So you can see how a company at a corporate level will use its strategic intent, its vision, mission, and values to differentiate yourself. And how the organization can at a product level understand the points of differentiation versus the points of parity. And that concludes our discussion. Let me quickly summarize. We looked at the definition of competitive advantage. We looked at the definition of differentiation. We looked at Porter's generic strategies and understood that differentiation is a strategic option. And then we looked at how you can understand points of differentiation and points of parity. And finally, how the company can use its vision, overarching mission and values to differentiate the organization. I'll see you in assessment criteria 1.1.